Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonksen, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast today. We are excited to have Rob on our podcast. Before we jump into that conversation, I want to remind you to always go to churchboom.org for Church Boom University, executive coaching. If you're a church under 100, you can get free coaching through our rescue initiative. There's just so much there to check out. But we're talking with Rob today from Virginia. He's a great friend of mine. And we're talking about how do you become a leader that leads your team in a way that is more productive. How do you cause your team to become more productive as they continue to work in the ministry of the church? It is really a great conversation. Let's check it out. But how can I serve you today? Let's jump into it.
Yeah. So my question for you is, Sundays come every single week, obviously for us in the church world. And what I find continues to happen is that because Sundays are constantly coming, staff think through, this is what I have to do for Sunday, but don't necessarily think strategic or big picture. So they're checking off boxes and like, okay, I got Sunday stuff done, but then big picture, they didn't think through, well, yeah, you have 2 volunteers in there, but you know, one of them is a psycho and one of them's 12. Like you didn't think through, like, yes, you checked the box and you got some people in there, but like now on actual Sunday, it creates a bigger problem.
I love that there's a plane going by right now, isn't there?
Yeah, it's the sound of freedom. That's for
those listening to the podcast, you're wondering what that was. They live right next to an Air Force base.
That is 100%. I didn't even notice it. That's how you know I'm from here.
It literally is landing in the church parking lot. I didn't even know what was going on.
I had no idea. They're dropping bombs like we're used to it.
We're used to it. It's happening. Anyway, all right. So they're kind of just dealing with just trying to get to the next Sunday is kind of what you're saying, but not really thinking big picture.
Yes, yeah, doing the job, but not necessarily thinking like, okay, yes, I just did the task, but did I think through big picture of it? Like in the long run, is this the best move, or are there other things I need to think through? Or so I'm how do you help others get to think strategically and think bigger picture and not just Sunday to Sunday?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I always recommend is, one thing I always say is that I think people have a tendency of working in ministry and not working on it, and I think that they have to separate those two. When they're living week to week, you're working in ministry. Oh my goodness, it's Tuesday. Now I'm starting to get the curriculum together, the message together, the worship together, the songs together. Busy. Get through a Sunday, go take a nap, wake up, do it all over again. But they're working in it. But they don't step back and work on it. And that's a big variable and a big difference, I think, Rob, for people, that they have to know the difference. They have to know the difference of working in something and working on something. Okay? That's one thing. Secondly is they also have to have strategic times. In my opinion, they have to have strategic times in which they work on ministry, not in ministry. So when do I step away and not worry about what Sundays come in and this, whatever may be happening, but when do I spend time, again, mission critical, when do I spend time thinking about the future? When do I spend time thinking about 6 months from now, what am I going to do? And if they don't block out the time, they're just going to live Sunday to Sunday. So I think, first of all, you have to have a paradigm shift from working in ministry and working on ministry. You have to really start thinking about your time and thinking, I've got to literally know that from 1 to 3 today, I'm just going to work on ministry. That means I'm working on the future and I'm working on what's going to happen and where we're headed. The other thing I think is a system, because I think messages inspire, systems change behavior. So I think a system is things like the 12-week year. Big fan of the 12-week year. So 12-week year being, okay, children's pastor, where do you want the ministry to be by the end of the year? I don't know, 8 months from now, 12 months from now, where do you want the ministry to be here? Okay, great. this is where you want it to be. I want to have 8 more leaders and all these volunteers, and I want to have a staff, and I want to have, I don't know, whatever else they want to do. I want to do all this stuff and whatever they want to do, big picture. Now, someone's going to have to help them think that way.
Okay.
But where do you want to be 9 months from now, or whatever that? Let's just use 9 months from now. Okay. Yeah. Now, 12 weeks. But what do you need to do in the next 12 weeks in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish 9 months from now? I love the phrase 12-week year. I don't think it's any new epiphany for people. It's just biting off a little bit at a time, kind of a concept. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, people really like that 12-week year statement where it's like, okay, the reason I like it is I don't really want you to even think about the end of the year. All I want you to think about is what are 4 things do you need to get done in the next 12? So in the next 12 weeks. So what that does is then you take it and you put it on some 11 by 17 paper, put it in their office, and whoever is holding them accountable and meeting with them and maybe on an every other week basis, they're going to that 12-week year and going, okay, I know you have Sunday coming. I know that you've got this worried about and that worried about, and you're just working about this week and next week and all that stuff. But let's go back for a moment for the 12-week year. I don't need you to accomplish 180 things. But these 4 or 5 things on the 12-week year, how are we doing? We're now 2 weeks into a 12-week year. We're now 4 weeks into a 12-week year. Did you do those things? That is, to me, so liberating because it's like, they're going to naturally. You're never going to have to push them to think about the coming up Sunday. Most people just kind of think Sunday to Sunday to Sunday. But when you're supervising them, working with them, holding them accountable, having regular meetings with them, then you're able to go to that 12-week year and just say, okay, we're halfway through a 12-week year. There's 5 things you were supposed to do. Where are we at with all of them? Okay, I've done this and I've done this, but I need to work on this, this, and this. Okay, what are we going to do in the next couple of weeks to make sure we stay on track? That's beautiful because I'm like, I don't need you to worry about 9 months from now, man. I just need you to worry about this. And then when that 12 weeks is up, we go, okay, next 12-week year. What do we need to do to make sure we get this accomplished now? Now it would be 6 months from now.
That's good.
And then you're just working that way. And it's just, it forces them to think outside of Sunday to Sunday.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah. So that's I think is a way of getting people to think big picture, and it forces them to think outside of Sunday to Sunday. And again, I reiterate the 12-week year. The reason I like the statement, the reason I like the concept is because it takes people that naturally don't think big picture and just thinks, okay, I just got to do these 5 things in the next 12 weeks. Well, what about 9 months? No. I just got to do these 5 things in the next 12 weeks. Yeah. I'll be on track for that. I just need these 5 in the next 12 weeks.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
It's really simple. Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah. What else you got, my man?
Yeah. That was the big one that I wanted information on, and my hand is cramping because I took so many.
That's good. It's a rental.
So, yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but that was the big one that I needed. I can always ask more questions if you.
Yeah, we got a few minutes. Ask a couple more questions if you got it. Yeah.
Great. Okay. One of the things that you coached us with when you were here is starting the leadership ladder and circles. And so one of my questions is what is your criteria for picking someone to join that circle? You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to have some people in the circle to see if they can move up the leadership ladder. Right, but is there any criteria? Is it just like, I kind of like this person, or, they don't look crazy? Like, what's your criteria for getting before you make the invite?
They don't look crazy. They're out of jail. Something like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Because I assume you're doing an ask and not a blanket like announcement.
Right.
Like, sign up for this. You're doing a personal ask.
Yeah.
So do you have personal filters to identify? Is it just people you think that are higher level leaders, people that have potential?
Yeah. I think when you're looking, and you're talking about that circle, right? So you're talking about 5-6 people. Okay. Yes. So when you're doing the leadership ladder, and for those that are listening, leadership ladder, you can find it on Church Boom University. But it basically is church, volunteers, leaders, leadership circle, leadership apprenticing. when you're taking 5 or 6 people and bringing them into a leadership circle, taking them through a book, working with them monthly, the vetting process is, I think there's some obvious ones, like we joked around, like, okay, the guy's not insane, or whatever. But there's obvious ones of, character, they've been around the church, whatever, those kind of things. Okay. To me, those are obvious and not, I'm just assuming we all know that. So now let's move over to other things. For me, I always first of all, I look at the 5 or 6 and I'm thinking, okay, I encourage find 3 or 4 that are on your team that you feel have potential and have sort of growth. You could see something in them. I also think you grab 1 or 2 people that may not be currently on your team, but you just look at them and think, okay, maybe this is their gateway into becoming more involved in the church, because it's like, I've had people in my circle where maybe they were an usher at best, and I brought them into as a lead pastor into my circle. They weren't even a head usher, but I brought them in because I thought, I see something in them. Now, I rolled the dice and it worked out. Sometimes it doesn't. But of the 5 or 6, 80% of them are people that you know and you think, man, they've got potential. Do they have potential? Do they want to grow? Are they hungry to grow? Have they shown a desire? And then there's 1 or 2 that maybe your invitation into a circle will open up so much for them. Okay. Maybe your invitation into a circle makes them feel like, whoa, I was invited into something exclusive. And I've just kind of been sitting back thinking the church doesn't need any of my leadership. And then you come to find out, whoa, this person's an insanely good leader. I just never even realized it. So I think there's something that my son's his college, he played college baseball. One of his baseball coaches used to talk about trajectory. Trajectory it's not where you're at, it's where you could possibly go. And so in my son's baseball world, he was a left-handed pitcher. They have to look and say, a coach has to look and say, I think this kid could get to 100-mile-an-hour fastball. He's not there yet. Yeah. Or I don't think this kid's ever going to get to 100-mile-an-hour fastball. I don't think he has that trajectory for that. You have to know the trajectory of people and say, I think they've got potential. They're loyal, they're faithful, they've been around, they've been character, but man, I just see something in them. Yeah. One of the natural things that I look for, and it doesn't always work out perfectly, but whenever I'm looking for people in the lobby, yeah, there's one thing that sometimes stands out. It's those that seem to be gravitational attractional. It's like I walk up to a circle and everybody's laughing, and I'm like, that dude's controlling this circle. He's leading this circle. He's the funny guy in the circle. You can tell he's dominating. You can tell, walk up to 8 people and you can tell the leader. It's the one just, it's not so much maybe a funny guy or maybe not a funny guy, but sometimes you can see certain things in people where it's like, man, that guy leads that family. That guy leads, there's these 2 families that come together and he seems like he's kind of the leader. And I kind of look towards a little bit of that natural, attractional, and gravitational feel as well.
That's good.
Is what I look for, Yeah. And you're rolling the dice on the circles, It's like 1 out of 10 will end up being great. Well, that's awesome. If you, in a year and a half, can discover 5 game-changing leaders, it changes everything. Your whole world changes with 5 amazing leaders.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
No, that's good. And then, do you have a book recommendation that you recommend for that first circle?
Yeah. Well, book recommendation. The one I really like, and I go back to it all the time, is, and it's like 24 years old, I think, or something. It's 21 Irrefutable Laws by John Maxwell.
Oh, yeah, John Maxwell.
Yeah. And the reason I like that book so much as a first book for a circle is because it's simple leadership. You're not bringing in advanced people. Every chapter is 21 different chapters. They're all pretty short. Okay. That's another good thing. And they're always like 7 points. 7 points in this chapter, 9 points in this chapter, 8 points, which makes conversation easy. A book from Jim Collins, which is always amazing, is like you got to really get your mind around it. But
Yeah.
with a Maxwell book, it's like here's 8 points, so people are going to go. I like point number 2 and point number 4. It creates easy conversation. I think as if the second book can get a little bit more, a little bit more advanced, but for that first book, I love points inside of the book. I think another one is my own personal coach, Dan Ryland, his book Confident Leader, because there's some biblical truth throughout it, which kind of makes it nice in our setting, but also it also has points throughout it as well. And who doesn't need more confidence, because we all have insecurity, and it's a great place to start. But 21 Irrefutable Laws, the reason I like that one, honestly, is the very first one, all the reason I just said, and also it's sort of the foundation, the law of magnetism, the law of attraction, the law of dealing with conflict. Like, it's all very foundational to leadership, and it always creates amazing discussions.
That's good. That's really good.
That's the one I like the most.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Give me
maybe
one more. Fire 1 or 2 more at me.
I was gonna say maybe I should I keep my own personal books to like the third or fourth.
Yeah,
book?
If you don't know, first of all, Rob's an author. He writes incredible books, and he's way better than I am, that's for sure. And he writes like 90,000 words in a book. I write like 8, and not 8,000, just 8. This is my book. Enjoy.
Well, I mean, for what it's worth, my first book got all 5-star reviews, got 1 4-star review. It was from my mom. So just make sure that you understand that before you buy my books.
Yeah. Your mom gave you 4 out of 5?
Yeah. I asked her about it, and she said, well, compared to the greats like by Shakespeare and like War and Peace, I just didn't think it was a good book, but it wasn't quite to that level. I was like, I didn't know Shakespeare was my standard. Like,
yes. There's Shakespeare, Rob Shepard.
Yeah.
Well, you can't get a 5-star from your mom. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, it's a me problem. I'll own it.
Oh, that is so good.
That's great.
Awesome. Well, give me one more.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about building leaders. What do you do if you feel like you don't have the leaders to build? Is there anything like, is it the circles that you just take a chance and hope someone comes through?
Yep,
But like,
yep.
if I'm tasked with finding 5 to start my circle, and I'm like, I can't find half of a person, like, how do I, where do you find these people?
Well, that's a great question. There's a couple things. Well, one, you're finding them in your church. I do think, and I'm not saying you're doing this, but I do say that I sometimes over the years, I have radically underestimated someone. I bring 5 people into a circle, and I'm like, I had no idea this was in you. I had no idea that there was this, sort of oil in you, but no one ever tapped it to see if there was oil. And, or no one ever tapped it to see that there was the gold. It's just like, no one's ever given the guy a chance. No one's ever asked the person leadership questions. All of a sudden you're open up thinking, it's just natural for this person.
Yeah.
I've got people that have gone through my circle that never has held a leadership position anywhere in their life. They weren't even a leader at their work. And then they come in the circle, and by the end of the book, I'm like, this person has it. They just have never been in they've never been in a position in which it's bloomed. It's been asked to bloom, or it's been cultivated to bloom, because they just, whatever, they just went through college. They got a job as a teacher at a school. They weren't really asked to lead anything. They're just, hey, teach this curriculum, to this 8th grade class or whatever. And then fast forward, it's like someone brings them into a circle, maybe sees a little bit of something in them, maybe has a conversation and thinks, man, maybe they got something here. I have done that way more than once. So one, I would say, Rob, I think that sometimes we underestimate people, I'm not saying I think you got to see something in them, but
Yeah.
even if you see a spark, that could create a flame, it's like, well, maybe there's something there. And I do think that we underestimate people. I know that I do. Secondly, I think there is a spiritual component.
Mm.
And the spiritual component is, I think that God always gives us what we need.
Mm.
The finances we need, the leadership we personally need, and the leaders around us. Now, do we need to? I read somewhere, and I probably won't get it right, but I was reading in a book, and it says, "Hey, God's going to give you the wood, but He's not going to build the chair for you." And I just thought, man, there's a lot of truth to that. It's like
Yeah.
the leader's there, but you're going to have to build it.
Yeah.
It's there. The wood's there. You're just going to need to build it. And I think sometimes we underestimate people. Not all the time. I think sometimes our estimations can be fair, but we underestimate people. But then also, I do think there's a spiritual component of, you've heard the statement, the answer's in the house. But I like that wood one, because I always feel like,
Good.
no, it's there. The dollars are here that are needed. The leadership ability is here that's needed. I just need to mine for the gold. And that's why I always say, when we talked about it, and I say it on the master class in Churchboom University, I teach on the leadership ladder. I always say sifting and sorting. That's a phrase that I think becomes more real the more you do it. You're like, oh, I get it. You are literally looking at 15 people and you're going, decent leader, good leader. They could work over there and maybe here. No. Uh-oh, there's one. You're constantly sifting and sorting.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that ever ends. I don't care how big your church gets. You're just always sifting and sorting because you're looking for the next great leader. But I believe the wood is there. We just got to build the chair.
Yeah.
And look for those that have some gravitational pull, some attractional pull, something in them. They might not even have a position of leadership in work or life, and maybe no one's ever even given them a chance. Maybe they never even asked for a chance. But I've got leaders that I'm telling you, never led anything, ever. And now they're on our staff leading big things. And because I look at them and I saw a little something in them, and by the end of that first book, I brought them into a second book. By the end of the second book, I was like, okay, this guy's just clearly, there's a well of amazing oil here, but no one's ever really tapped into it.
Yeah.
And it's sifting and sorting,
Yeah.
It's sifting and sorting. You're looking for, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 12.
Yeah.
But when you find them, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Does that help? Yeah.
It helps a lot. And I keep asking questions all around this because we are very challenged and all in from that line you gave us about we are one pneumonia away from a disaster. And without, I think I got that. Is that quote right?
Yep.
Without this leadership pipeline, we have a lot of momentum right now and we're growing and there's a lot of good things going on, but we're one pneumonia away from disaster. And that's why all my questions are geared towards this, because we are working on getting this going.
Well, I think there's a lot of churches in that way. And one pneumonia away from a disaster is, man, if that worship pastor gets sick for 3 months, we're done. That children's pastor gets sick. And, it happens every day of our life. Someone gets a pneumonia or something happens. And man, again, it's a paradigm shift. I was just out of town yesterday. I just flew back in today. And I sat with a really great church, phenomenal leaders, and I feel like it's somewhat the same thing. Pneumonia away from a disaster. And they're a pretty good-sized church, big staff, but all one level. And but it's so interesting to me, the paradigm shift, Rob. It's like, okay, develop leaders, build teams. I feel like I say that to churches 1,000 times, and then like 1,001 times, like, oh, I get it. It's because and it goes back to your very first question. Because it's like, no, we don't have you here just to get us through another Sunday.
Yeah.
We have you here to build this amazing ministry. That's what you're here for. I actually don't want you doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Which is so odd for a lot of people to think, because most people are task driven and they're given a job and then they do their job and that's what they feel like they're getting paid for. And in most cases, that's the way life is. But in our case, it's like, yeah, no, I just want you to develop leaders, build teams. And I really I don't even need you as a worship leader leading worship. I need you to develop other people to lead worship.
Mm-hmm.
It was so funny because it happens all the time. I had one person raise their hand. They're all, in all honesty, if I build people up, then why does the pastor need me? I'm like, bro, if your pastor lets you go, you got a job, right? No decent lead pastor is going to let go of anybody that builds up leaders and develops teams. That's why I say, like, youth pastor, I don't need you speaking. Children's pastor, I don't need you speaking. I don't need the worship leader leading worship. What I need you to do is building tons of teams. You do that, and man, they think they're going to get a demotion. It's actually you're going to get a promotion. and it's hard for people to click over into that. But the thing is, we develop leaders and we build teams. We are constantly building up people to do what we do better than we do it. And man, we do that and we start creating layers of leadership. And then I think when we do that, that's back to the thing I talked to you about. I think when we do that, we start building all this real kind of great leaders, great teams. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's an opportunity for multi-site, or we're now we got to go to 4 services, and you're like, well, people think, well, I'm going to build leaders and build teams, and what am I going to do with all these people? But God, I think, actually goes, okay, now I'm going to start giving you a ton of rain.
Yeah.
Why would God give rain if we can't handle it? Like, let me give you 1,000 people. You're not ready for 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Why would I give you rain if you can't handle it? And
that's a
if
great
you don't,
point.
and so he's the ultimate steward, and he's the ultimate property manager. So we both know Jackie Allen in Arizona, and I started working with him years ago. I think they had one campus or 2 or whatever. They just launched their 5th campus, and he has told me no less than 4 times. He goes, "You always told me if I dig the ditch, God will give the rain. Build this up and watch what happens." And man, I think he's on his 3rd property, just hand it to him. And I said, God's the ultimate property manager. When you can handle it, he'll give it to you. Why would he give it to you if you can't do anything with it? And so you build this and then he'll do this.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
If people get that, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, then watch what God does.
Yeah.
He'll give the rain. He always gives the increase.
Yeah.
If we dig the ditch, he'll give the rain. So
that's
anyway.
good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Awesome having you on. Thanks so much for jumping on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you,
buddy. Have a good day, bud. Thank you for tuning in to the Fly on the Wall podcast. We hope today's episode provided you with some practical steps to lead your church to the next level. If you found this episode helpful, take a moment to leave us a review and share it with others. Remember, when the pastor grows, the church grows, and we grow pastors. We love you. We're your raving fans, and we are cheering you on. See you next week.